Welcome to Silicon Slopes Friday Conversations. Today we have Garrett Blood, who is the founder and CEO of Kajae, and a good friend. How are you?
Doing good, man.
Thanks for being here today. It's like a solar eclipse out there. It's so dark. It's raining and thundering, college graduation, but appreciate everyone who's here today. So you've got a journey to talk about, and we're going to mix it up a little bit and talk a little fun stuff like the 80s and movies from the 80s and a little bit of music. And again, we will open it up for questions from the audience. But let's start with what you're currently doing. Kajae, the mission, the idea, what the business does.
Oh, okay. It's Kajae stands for the names of my kids: Kate, Ariana, Jack, Alexa, Ethan. It's a 5-letter domain that still existed, which was fun. And it means gift from God in Jamaican, which I lucked out about that it's an actual word. And we're premium staff augmentation. So we take highly skilled talent from 26 countries, individuals that have masters, MBAs, PhDs from top schools around those 26 countries. They speak English like all of us, C1, C2 level. And in addition to that, they have typically Fortune 500 level experience. And we pay them 5 to 10 times more than a living wage. So we take them from poverty and move them into middle class in 60 days or less. And we find amazing companies here in the United States. We have a lot here in Utah. And that are looking for talent. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes you've got talent that has 1 foot in and 1 foot out, looking for that opportunity somewhere else. And when they leave, they take all that intellectual property with them. And because of our team, our amazing team members, they're loyal and grateful professionals that are just grateful for an opportunity. And so because of that, they're lifers. They love what they do. And so it saves companies about 70 to 80% compared to a domestic hire that isn't typically, there's sometimes a huge entitlement component there. I talk to people all the time that graduate from college and they say, well, I want $120,000 to start. I have no experience, but I want $120,000. And it's just, it blows my mind. And that experience level isn't there, but they can command that in this environment. And so Kajae, my mission is, again, to take individuals from here and move them to here. So if they can be the 2.0 version of themselves, that's what we strive to do. And they get full medical and dental, paid time off, paid maternity, paid paternity leave. We have a clinical psychologist with a PhD on staff for mental health. We have continuing educations with Thunderbird University to help them pursue entrepreneurism and lift where they stand. And then we send them on a summit every year. So we're taking the Latin American team to Punta Cana, Dominican Republic in June. Last year they were in Machu Picchu. And then like our Philippine team, we take them to, and all of Asia, we took them to different islands in the Philippines. In November, we took them swimming with whale sharks, which is super cool. So that's what we do. We try to be an experience type company as well, so that they can have these memories that'll last a lifetime.
Yeah, really amazing stuff and a lot of work. We're going to get back to it in a second because what you're doing has a lot of moving parts and is challenging. Anytime you say 26 countries and dental and insurance all in the same sentence, like, oh, there's a lot of logistics there. Not for the faint of heart, but what got you to the point where you could pull this off? Background in entrepreneurship since a young age.
Yeah.
Possible hustling element there.
Totally.
Ups and downs, had to earn it, right? Like you were kind of up against the wall.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship, kind of like for folks in less fortunate parts of the world, is sometimes like, all right, this is the only go we got. We better give her a go. Totally. But Arctic Zero is an endeavor that you did, which is ice cream.
Yeah.
Right? Learning curve with anything food science.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a background on Arctic Zero. What did you learn there that you are going to have applied and will apply into these endeavors into the future?
You know, it's funny. I would always crave ice cream after the gym, and it would negate everything I just did in the gym if I had a bunch of ice cream, right? And so one day I remember I was at a Subway type of sandwich shop, and I'm talking to a buddy of mine, and I'm like, and I see a frozen yogurt machine, and I go, why can't that stuff be healthy, you know? And like a protein ice cream or something. And then, of course, it was that light bulb moment, and we go and we buy a soft serve machine, and we start dumping all sorts of stuff in it and almost break the machine, and every concoction that we come up with is just worthy of the trash can. It is terrible. But eventually, it was like the 1,000th iteration. You know, it's like Edison saying, after 10,000 times, I came up with the light bulb that worked. And we came up with a flavor that worked pretty decent. And so it was fat-free, gluten-free, lactose-free, diabetic-friendly, 150 calories a pint, 20 grams of whey protein, 8 grams of fiber, and it tasted good, surprisingly, right, with all that. And all natural, clean ingredients, nothing that would make somebody have to run to the bathroom or something like that, which is commonplace with a lot of brands these days. But we were the first to put calorie counts on the front of packages. And so getting it into one store, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000 grocery stores, and then 18,000 grocery stores. So it was Haagen-Dazs is #1 pint in America. Ben & Jerry's was #2, and we were #3. And I would say number 57 of 552,000 food items on Amazon. And we were one of the few that had net 15 terms. And in fact, it got so bad at one point that Amazon owed us so much money. I called them up. I'm like, I'm about to turn off the spigot. I go, I've got to turn it off because we are going to go bankrupt because we're buying 10,000 pounds of dry ice a week in addition to everything else. And she goes, no, don't do that. She goes, give me 30 minutes. So she calls or walks across, or I don't know how she talked to, whatever, talks to the senior VP of Frozen or whatever, and he goes and talks to Jeff Bezos, gives them the thumbs up. She calls me back. She goes, we're giving you net 15 terms. There's only like 100 companies that have net 15. And we're going to get you paid everything that we owe you. You'll get a check tomorrow that's being overnighted. And that was awesome. And so, but my whole goal with Amazon was it was a marketing play, because they used to send out information to everybody. This might be a good recommendation for you. You should buy it. And so that started building some brand equity. And the big goal, though, too, was they could ship anywhere in the United States for a fraction of the cost of anything else. And so being in the San Diego area, if I needed to send samples to a store in New York, it was about $120 all in. Shipping was like $90 almost to send a couple of pints of ice cream in dry ice in an insulated container. But if I sold it to myself on Amazon, it was $46 for 6 pints. We would get the lion's share of that, of course, and our effective net shipping cost was about $12. So we could ship it for practically $12 across the country overnight. And then, of course, we were out the cost of product and some dry ice. In dry ice, we had gotten down to 30 cents a pound, which was amazing. And so we could effectively, our acquisition cost was like $17 per customer at that point. And so we just did that. And it actually boosted our numbers as well when we would just sell it and we'd send it to all these different buyers. But we kind of gamed the system. I don't know if they still let you do that, but I pretend to sell it to myself, but it was someone else's information.
I love it. You bested Bezos in a little business chicanery, and then you also freaking debt collected him. That's amazing. Twofer. Good for you.
I didn't think about that. I love that. That's good. I'm going to use that.
Not many people can say that one. So you owe me money, guy.
You owe me money.
You got any? Yeah, I do. Amazing. So a lot was learned there, right? Like, these are the interesting stories of throwing a bunch of stuff in a machine.
Yeah.
You have zero background in any food science or anything like that. But the question was, why can't it be healthy? And then, it turns out it's a lot of work to figure that out, right?
It was.
Why can't you split the atom? I don't know. Put in a lot of work and get 10,000 people to try and figure it out. You eventually will. Really interesting stories there. So after that, I'm interested in Kajae's story as it pertains to you, right? Because this had to be an idea of There's talented people all over the world. I'm going to build a platform company that will connect those two, right? Like two different scopes there. So where did the idea or the passion or the drive come from with KJ?
You know, what's interesting is I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Mexico about 24 years ago. No, 26 years ago was when and I just got really familiar with just the poverty level in Mexico. It was unbelievable, and the food insecurity pieces associated with it, and people are just trying to get by. And then I find myself years later in the Philippines and other parts of Asia like China, and just noticing very similarly those same issues. And for me, the Philippines is the Mexico of Asia, you know, but I also call it the country of smiles because they're just happy. And so my goal, I don't want to get emotional, my goal was to figure out a way in which you could take this brilliance and create opportunity. And I'm a big believer that skills, strengths, and talent are fairly and widely distributed, but opportunity is not. And so how do you connect individuals in various different countries with companies here that would love to find someone that's just eager for an opportunity and will bust their tail to perform and compete with Americans, and they're grateful for it. And so now their whole livelihood changes. They go from working 3 jobs and only being able to eat twice a day to 3 meals, buying their first car, going and buying a house, sending their kids to good schools. Like, I have a member of my team, her name's Sarah, she lives in Venezuela, and she speaks 4 languages, 4. Has 2 master's degrees in fine art, one from the University of Spain. She got a full ride and figured, I don't know how she did it, but she did it. Worked for the United Nations, they didn't pay her squat. And she starts working for us, and in 2 weeks she sends me a picture of a bed. She goes, I bought my first bed. And you got Americans complaining that their internet's not fast enough, you know? And it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. So some of those experiences got me thinking, and I had an assistant, and you know, it's funny, everyone's like, oh, I've tried offshore or near shore, I've tried having an assistant, and I had a bad experience. And I'm like, if you're bedding to a bad mechanic or a bad doctor or a bad dentist, they're not all bad, but there's some that are sketchy, but that doesn't cloud all the other individuals in those professions. And so that's our goal, is to present them the top 3% out there. And but yeah, it was just me working with my assistant, and she's now our chief of staff. And I've been working with her for quite a while. And little by little, we just kind of built a little bit of a team, and people were like, who's your person? And before long, it became, you know what, there's a huge need here, and I think we can do a lot of good here.
Amazing. We'll come back to a lot of KJ here in a minute, but let's just have a little bit of fun and jump around.
Let's do it.
You've got a couple of funny and cool stories about the 80s, but you're kind of a movie buff. Guy Ritchie.
Oh, man. Guy Ritchie. If anyone's familiar, he's only made a couple of bad mistakes. One of them was marrying Madonna. But you know, he makes some great movies, and a lot of underrated movies. And you know, if anyone's seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., amazing movie, or King Arthur for the 100th iteration. But King Arthur by Guy Ritchie is an amazing movie. But he's got a new one out, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, that I have not seen yet. But the book is one of the best books you'll ever read. It's so fun, and it's based on a true story. And are you familiar with it?
But I get the premise based on his other movies that it's going to be pretty good.
Oh, it's...
And sneaky funny.
Sneaky funny. So I'm really excited to go check it out.
Snatch.
Oh, fantastic movie. Even though Brad Pitt, you can't hardly understand him. You got to use the
beauty of it.
You got to, and what's funny is you have to put on the subtitles to pick it up. And do you know why he talks like that? what was so funny was he says, you know what, we want you to have like an Irish accent and like an accent of like someone that's like a wandering gypsy type of thing.
Irish traveler, pikey.
Yes.
You're not supposed to call them pikeys or gypsies anymore.
Yes,
but
I know. That's I don't even know the word for it. What would you say? A traveler?
they're called travelers now.
Okay,
Yeah.
a traveler, right? And it's so funny. And sorry, I'm not the most politically correct person. I'm super blunt and direct, but it's he couldn't nail the accent. He kept butchering it, and they just said, you know what, Brad Pitt, you're Brad Pitt. Just roll with it. Just make up the accent as you see fit. And so that movie is him just winging an accent that he just created on his own, and that's why it sounds so different than anybody else in the movie. Yeah. So it's pretty funny.
But I think he also got it fairly right because Tyson Fury, the world heavyweight champion, is an Irish traveler. And a lot of his entourage are still like rough and tumble Irish travelers, and they sound very similar to Brad Pitt.
Interesting.
Tough to understand. You get every fifth word maybe.
Right.
But you can cobble it together. But like I love watching people saying that same thing like, what the hell was he talking about? That's
right.
kind of funny.
Oh, you got to watch it a couple of times to catch it or slow it down. It's fantastic.
Let's talk the 80s and how they kind of maybe influenced you, right? With like the optimism, the can-do attitude, whether it's the economics, the politics, the music, the movies.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your first movie was?
Whew. My first movie.
Or concert?
I think the first movie that I watched and it freaked me out was Neverending Story.
Wolf?
All of it. It was just freaky, you know? It was just statues that would shoot you with laser beams, and it was just like scary. But of course, some of the other movies that came later, I was too young. I was born in '79, so Star Wars came out before that. And then, of course, you had Empire Strikes Back in '80, and then you had Return of the Jedi in '82. So I saw those years later, and enthralled with that. I love Star Wars, all things Star Wars. If anyone's been to Silicon Slopes Summit, you might have seen a 6-foot stormtrooper at one of the booths. That's my stormtrooper. And I'm an uber nerd when it comes to Star Wars. And now it's popular to be a Star Wars nerd, so it's before. But the 80s was just, it was a fantastic time. That whole decade, for me anyway, was palpable. Like, you just loved it. I can't explain it. And the movies, the music, that's one thing that you and I talked about. My first concert when I was 10 was Michael Jackson. And he had just finished Thriller. Now he was on to his next album, which was Bad. Not bad as in bad, but bad because the name of it was Bad. And it was fantastic. And so such a great time. But it was just a clean time in Southern California.
California in the 80s.
Oh, Southern California in the 80s, there's nothing like it. I always say it was amazing before the dark times. Before the empire, you know, it was, and it's just been ruined. And so now it's just a good place to visit and vacation, but I couldn't live there anymore after 30 years.
Yeah. And the president for the 80s was Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Ronald.
And you had a good exchange with him, right? Tell us that
I
story
did.
real
My
quick.
11th birthday, it seems like all these different birthdays, but 11th birthday, I go to Disneyland, and we lived about 20 minutes from Disneyland. And we had season passes. It was like $40 back then, and there weren't blackout days. And I remember walking down, this was a different event, but walking down Main Street and being the only person on Main Street and the rotunda at the end. Looking left, looking right, looking straight ahead, nobody. And that's impossible to do today. Impossible. But when I was 11, I'll never forget, we had just gotten off Pirates of the Caribbean and let you out in that little alleyway right there. And there was only like 5 of us there, a bunch of adults, and I'm the only kid. And I'm 11. And Ronald Reagan was at Disneyland that day because he was celebrating, I think it was like the 35th anniversary, and he was there on opening day and with Art Linkletter and congratulating Disneyland. And he was on there, and that was it. And I was like, wow, this is on my birthday? This is fantastic. But later at Pirates of the Caribbean, we get off. There's 5 of us over there. And all of a sudden you see these men in black suits with this pounce as they walk, very deliberate. And you're like, whoa, these are scary guys, coming out glasses like you see in the movies, earpieces, and they come out, and there's like 4 or 5 of them. And then about 8 feet behind him, comes around the corner, it's Ronald Reagan. And I'm like, holy smokes. I know who this guy is. And he comes up, and all of a sudden, he's going into Club 33. That's where they're going to eat. And he stops and starts shaking everyone's hand. Someone goes, "We love you, Ronnie, we love you." And he's like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, his whisper tone voice. And he's shaking all of our hands. And I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. Perfect hair, you know. And then he goes, if you guys would excuse us, we're going to go and get, my guys haven't eaten all day. And we're going to go and grab some lunch. But we'll be back, we'll be back. I was like, wow, that's classy, you know? And so they went off, and that was it. But that was Ronald Reagan. So I was enthralled with Ronald Reagan after that. Yeah.
Not even voting age, but if you could vote for him, you would have.
Oh, totally would have.
Yeah.
Totally.
But apparently he had a lot of charisma and power over a lot of people because he didn't lose a lot of elections, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Very cool. Back to KJ. The business model for y'all, right? Like there's plenty of companies within a drive or 3 wood of here that need talent, you know, whether it's, you know, product or development, technical, legal, right, or even engineering. How do you guys set it up so that you guys still make money? You're not a nonprofit, right?
No.
You talked about the benefit for your folks in those 26 countries, which is amazing, but how do you set it up where it can scale, that it's profitable, and it works?
So we were profitable the first month that we went into business. We didn't take any money, completely bootstrapped it myself. And my whole thing was I didn't want to raise money. Still to this day, I get approached by VCs and private equity that want to throw money at us. And it works for some companies, but if we were to take any money, they would want to change the mission, vision, and values of who we are, because they would want to build it in order to sell it. And turn and get a multiple to, a lot of times, the detriment of everybody there. And I know that's not popular, especially here in Utah, to say something like that, but that's just how I feel. And I've seen too many companies that have lost their souls because of some of those things. And so we find brilliant talent in everything from accounting, senior accountants, controllers, graphic designers, video editors, working for major companies, billion-dollar companies. In addition to accountants, legal experts, attorneys. We have individuals that are full-stack developers and programmers, data analytics, AI learning experts, engineers, mechanical, civil, electrical, anything that can be done remotely, architects, you name it. I always say we are the scalpel in the operating room, not a machete. And so that's something that I love to do. So we charge a flat rate. And for example, a senior accountant might be about $2,700, $2,500 to $2,900 per month. That's all in. That's 40 hours a week in the trenches with them. You're not dealing with payroll tax or workers' comp. You're not dealing with another set of benefits. And so you got a $100,000 hire for about that much. And the lion's share of that goes to a member of our team with all their benefits. And so we make a very small margin in there. And that's what we do. So it's sufficient for our needs. And in order for us to scale and grow, it helps them out. It helps the client out. It's that triple win. But they're our number one priority. And what's interesting is we'll talk to a client. I'll say, just so you know, they're my number one priority. You're number 2, and we're number 3. And so I'm like, if you don't like that, I totally get it. But because I know if they love what they do, they feel safe, they feel secure, taken care of, they know we're long term, then they pull out the stops for their client. And they are the best individual at that company, basically. And then that company is happy with KJ, and it's a circle. And I call that conscious capitalism. And so yeah, that's how we roll it.
And on your website, you've got a map of all of the locations you're at. Obviously been in the news a lot. Ukraine, we've had a couple initiatives here, but there's a lot of talent in Ukraine. And that's just an example. So let's just pick a random city. Let's just say it's Johannesburg, South Africa. and you guys have identified that as like, that might be a good spot. How do you guys open new markets? Like, do you go and boots on the ground? Are you going off of data? Are you going off of gut? How do you branch out?
So I've got an amazing recruiting team. They are just, they can find the needles in the haystack. So I mean, we interview 200 individuals and hire the top 3. And the 197 that don't make it, we actually have a separate company that we set up that gets them experience, gets them the education, and helps them with their English so that they can reapply to Kajae as many times as necessary. And that recruiting team, through a plethora of different methods and techniques, a lot of IP there, that they are able to find these individuals for specific roles. Like one time we put out, I remember an ad, or I should say a posting, a number of postings for a specific accounting position, and we had 5,000 applicants. And we had to narrow that down. And that was very, very difficult. But usually it's based on where they're at. So if we have someone from Johannesburg, Africa that says, I would love to apply for this specific position in e-commerce or vendor relations, then they move through, and if they get hired, now we're on the map in that specific country. And so that's how it's rolled and happened. But yeah, we don't typically go to a specific country to try to open it up. But we don't have boots on the ground except for them that live in those countries, of course.
Yeah. But if you did want to like explore the world, you could always say, I got to go check in on our folks. And
you know, we've done that before.
Yeah.
One of my chief growth officer, this is John right here. My wife's in the back there by the wall. It was funny. He and I went and visited a vendor, and I should say a client that we have as well in Portugal. And nothing quite as nice as saying, you know what, Uncle Sam, I'm going to go visit a client here and write off most of this trip here. And that worked out terrific. Anything I can do to take care of the man, I guess you
can avoid government. Like, going to Calgary in January. Yeah. You can kind of pick and choose where you want to go.
I'll stay clear of Calgary in the wintertime.
Let's fast forward 20 years, right? Like this seems like a company that you're not going to flip, right? This
Correct.
is something that you're very passionate about.
I'm a lifer. And
you'll have tens of thousands, theoretically hundreds of thousands of like really good success stories. Too many to even probably remember, but your heart will be full, I would imagine. A lot of these folks are going to learn a lot working for these companies. They're going to interact with folks, learn a whole new cultural way of talking and thinking, and they're going to be like, I can make a go at this, whether it's in the industry they're in, or it could be selling apples on the side of the road, whatever it is, right? They're going to be an entrepreneur. You might be in a good position to even facilitate and help them in some sort of massive compounding effect. Have you thought through that?
Oh yeah, that's my 20 and 30 year goal, actually. If anyone's read The Prosperity Paradox or How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen, my 2 favorite books, he kind of explores some of those things. And that was part of the catalyst for me creating Kajae was those 2 books. And one of the things that I love in The Prosperity Paradox is he talks about South Korea. And a lot of people don't know this, but South Korea is one of the poorest nations in all of Asia in 1950. And then you've got some very tiny little companies that a few of us have heard of today, namely Samsung, LG, Hyundai. I mean, a lot of major billion-dollar multinationals. And those companies started out very, very small. And what was interesting, Samsung, perfect example, they would have employees that were trying to get to work and couldn't get to work. So what did? They paved the dirt roads that had been washed out by floods. And then they started dealing with brownouts on a regular basis. And so what did? They invested money in the electrical infrastructure. They had employees that were getting cholera and bad illnesses from the water. So what do? They filter and clean up the water supply. And so now you've got individuals that have clean water, solid electricity, and roads. And that infrastructure lifted the entire community. And so my goal is to find these individuals. I already know they've got the best education. They've got the best experience. They've got the best English. And if they take our initiatives for entrepreneurship from one of the top schools here in the United States that we offer for free, I know they've got the initiative. They've got the entrepreneurial drive. Now they need the next best thing to help them grow, which is also the hardest, which is the capital. And so what I want to do is be able to be that catalyst for their growth in their country to help people lift where they stand.
Yeah. It's better for them, better for their country, right? Because they'll be paying taxes. They're not leaving.
It's one of those things where what's interesting is you take one person from poverty and you move them to middle class. It actually helps them plus 10 more people. So 11 people's lives change because of one person getting an opportunity. So.
It's very cool. We're going to open up for questions here in a minute, so if we could get the microphone ready. Back to the 80s and movies. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. You're old enough to compute what was happening there. I still don't get why the stormtroopers would want to put on body armor that was cumbersome and ineffective, and they just get rolled up constantly.
Every time.
Just the worst.
Every time.
Zero
accuracy, by the way.
Yeah. It's like, you're out shooting your friends with BB guns and you can't see the BB, but
you're dead.
You can see these lasers that the stormtroopers are shooting, and you can swat them away with, I guess you have to have the force to swat them away. But
right.
Anyways, there's some tactical military inaccuracies with the stormtroopers.
Like sound in space, right?
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on what came next? There was kind of a dark period of Star Wars after. I've watched it as a middle fan, right? But
right.
You're a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
And then the handsome Darth Vader of the early 2000s, whatever his name is.
Hayden Christensen?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Is he still alive? Where did he go?
He's still alive.
Okay. Just doesn't want to act anymore?
He's actually been in some post-productions and stuff like that for Star Wars and different shows and stuff. So he's still there, live and kicking, but...
Yeah. He was good.
Yeah.
And then, The Mandalorian and stuff. But what are your thoughts on, as you've kind of transitioned into adulthood, and it's still a legacy and a product there?
It's super fun. I always say this is the best time to be a Star Wars fan because you've got so many different mediums to watch Star Wars on, whether it's movies or streaming or something like that. But I found in my evolution I've got 5 kids, and my wife and I have been married now 22 years, so I don't get myself in trouble. Almost
Risky
23.
business.
Yeah, she's here. She's in the back. And kudos to my wife. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm sitting today if it wasn't for her. No one ever gives the accolades to the spouse as much. And in reality, she's my other half, equally yoked, makes things happen. But no, in terms of Star Wars, it's because of my kids. So my kids would go and they'd watch different movies and see it with me. And it's that fun time on the couch with Dad. And before long, they're avid fans as well. And so now it's multi-generational. And I'm sure Disney loves that because it's just...
I'll be damned. It actually works and makes a lot of money. I tried to get my 8-year-old daughter for months and months to watch Flight of the Navigator, which is a 80s movie.
I remember that one.
And it would have been so much easier if there was a iteration of Flight of the Navigator in 2015 or something where she could relate to it. Finally did get her to watch it, and she's like, this is awesome. It's everything was way better back then. But anyways, raise your hand if you've got a question here for Garrett.
Hi, thank you. I, as a technical recruiter myself, I actually really, really appreciated what you had to say about conscious capitalism, that people come first, the talent comes first, and you're really connecting them to the opportunities. And, I have seen how that has changed people's lives, working a little bit on global remote. My question was actually about how you see AI changing the industry, kind of particular to that. I've tried, messing around with that, trying to really pay attention to what the market is doing, but to me, it's hard to see how, especially at that top 3%, like you're talking about, very, very qualified candidates who are getting, inundated often. Is there any substitute for, establishing those relationships? And how do you see that playing out as these tools become more and more powerful?
Great question. I'm a big believer that AI won't take your job. Those that leverage AI will. And so the goal is to help them get familiar with AI. So we do trainings with ChatGPT 4 on a regular basis, Dolly and a few other things to help keep them sharp. Because there's a lot, I think we're seriously in the infancy of AI. I say we're the Netscape navigator of browsers currently right now, and it's going to get crazy. And so the goal is to stay in front of it as best we can. And because they're the best at what they do, and they've got amazing aptitude, they're going to be able to do that. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where we're going to be in 10 years. It's going to be crazy. Are we going to have AI robots walking around? But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun ride.
I don't want to derail, but I want the mirror image of what you offer. I'm working with the first company in Kinshasa, DR Congo, that will assemble computers on site that needs world-class leadership. The entrepreneur is an amazing guy with many years of experience. He's just made a sale for 150,000 computers to the Ministry of Higher Education that he's going to assemble in DR Congo. Well, some of them he's importing from China. The rest he'll import the parts and assemble. We are looking to put together a leadership team for his business that does software development, that has a data center, and is bringing fiber Wi-Fi to homes. My question is, I'm looking to find him the leadership. He's like his corporate staff to be expats.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mirror image of what you're doing, but that's what prompted me to come in. And maybe it's worth talking individually. But do you see the reverse? How do you get the competency in the foreign firms that can help them grow? I used to work with Clayton Christensen, actually.
Oh, I love it.
And I tell my African clients, so have you read The Innovator's Dilemma? No. Well, The Economist says it's one of the 6 most important books ever written about business, but the one that's more important for you is the prosperity paradox.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the side I'm working on.
Got it. So if I heard you correctly, you were asking about the mirror image associated with finding expats positions with that company in particular. We don't typically work in that realm, mainly because you've got comparable talent in every country. You've got a sprinkle of brilliant active ingredient, if you will, in every country. So they don't necessarily need to be expats with experience working with US firms. They could have amazing experience in their own backyard. They just need to be introduced. And so what we usually do, it could be on a Monday. Someone comes to us and says, Garrett, we need to find a mechanical engineer. We need to find someone that is a corporate controller that has experience working at a top firm. And we need them as soon as you can find them. And what happens is someone will come to us on a Monday, and we will present them 3 candidates for each of those positions by Friday. And then they're in the trenches working with them on Tuesday of the next week, because we move very, very quickly, because we have a warm bench of just brilliance. And so that's the dilemma that I find a lot of companies in right now, no matter where they are, thinking that talent and experience is only going to be in that American or that expat. But that's one of the blessings of COVID, I feel like, is that infrastructure has grown so dramatically that we can have a conversation on Zoom and we don't skip a beat now. Hope that answers your question a little bit.
So Garrett, I might be a little slow, but are you actually hiring Señorita Tomas in Argentina, or are you actually a body shop finding Senorita Tomas with a PhD in Argentina? Which is it?
Great question. We're kind of a hybrid. This is why we're a little bit different than onshore and nearshore. I mean, offshore and nearshore. We find this talent, and this talent is looking for something that is long-term. They're tired of being a freelancer, for example, working for firms and being out of work and feast and famine type of situations. And so they come to us and they get hired. They get hired by us. They're basically independent contractors, but they get all the benefits of an employee. But it depends on the country in which they live, because every country's got different rules, different logistics, and then we pay them. They get all their benefits through us, but they're working full-time, 40 hours a week with our clients. And we've got trainings and seminars and all-hands meetings at Kajae on a regular basis, because ultimately they're family members at Kajae, but they work for their client about all over. Yeah.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. As an entrepreneur, I've got to assume that there's a lot of stress and a lot of things that you worry about regularly. Maybe not now as you're finding success, but my question to you is, how do you stay positive during the dark times?
Brilliant people, honestly. I mean, I've got a team that is just tremendous at what they do, and they are experts in their fields, so they've taken a lot of the hats off me, which has been super helpful, so I can concentrate on vision. If anyone's ever taken Strength Finder, Clifton Strengths, if anyone's ever taken that, it's one of my, I highly recommend that Strength Finder test. My number one strength is ideation. So I'm an ideas guy. I love to just ponder and think about ways in which we can improve, ways in which we can just help people progress. And so the positivity piece comes from my team, but it also comes from my family, and it also comes from members of my team spread across 26 countries, and being able to hear them talk about things that they're going through or things that they've overcome because of an opportunity, right? They're making more money than they've ever had before. I've got a member of my team. He's a pretty solid accountant. When I say pretty solid accountant, he is a senior accountant with a major firm. He's remarkable. He also is the local bishop in his congregation. And I remember one time he was telling me, he goes, yeah, it takes me about, it's like 2 hours, I think it was 2 hours to go pick up individuals and bringing them to church every Sunday. And he goes, Garrett, now I bought a car, it takes me 20 minutes. And you hear these stories and you can't help but smile. And yeah, I mean, I get those all the time, and they're, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Let's say you're flying in a plane over the Pacific and it crash lands. You're the only one on the plane for some reason.
Okay.
Everything's blown up except for a TV, a VCR, and a Sony cassette Walkman. You'll be rescued in 30 days, but you've got one movie that is on VHS and one soundtrack that is on your Sony Walkman.
Wow.
You got 30 days, and there's no books or anything to read. You can eat some coconuts, but you've got two forms of entertainment. What is the movie and what is the soundtrack?
That is a hard question. The movie soundtrack, or I should say the cassette tape, because yeah, we all remember cassette tapes, and some people remember 8 tracks. And further back than that, CDs now, I used to throw them. I don't know if everyone remembers the America Online CDs, and you're just like, quit sending me this garbage, right? Cassette tape, I would probably say, I'm going to come up with something witty, but I don't have anything. I was going to say something crazy, but favorite is probably something from Tears of Fears, or Oingo Boingo. Two classic 80s groups, right? And then Tears for Fears. I don't know if I said it right, but from back in the day. And favorite movie
On VHS.
on on VHS. I'm just picturing a 12 o'clock on a VCR right now. Favorite movie, my go-to would be some Star Wars movie, but I'm not going to say that. I would probably say it was probably Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark.
Classic 80s, good soundtrack.
Classic 80s. Harrison Ford, just a great movie. Just those adventure movies were just the best.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. When I first met you and heard about KJ, I remember thinking, like, man, it would be so cool if like Canada was infinitely better than the United States and they could hire me for 5 to 10x more. But at the same time, like hearing your vision, because I've heard it a few times now, I love everything about it. What a cool company that you've got here. So really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, sir. Well done.